Tonight's talk is called Four Modes to Perfect Vision. I see a lot of people here wearing glasses, and I'm sure that you don't have perfect vision. And I'm going to give you some tips tonight. Some of you here are probably short-sighted, and some are long-sighted, and some have astig, and some other various sorts of ailments, right? And I'm sure that a guy who's got long sight will not be able to use a pair of spectacles that has been designed for someone with short sight, right? And if you have some defect in your eye, maybe you have a cataract in your eye, having a pair of specs wouldn't make any difference. You will have to go for an operation to remove your cataract before you can perfect your vision. So it seems that even if you want to perfect your vision, there is not a single way of doing it, and there are various ways of doing it according to individual needs. What I'm going to talk about tonight, Four Modes to Perfect Vision, is based on a sutta from the Samyutta Nikaya, the connected sayings of the Buddha, where the Buddha gave a simile called the Kingsukopama Sutta, the simile of the Kingsuka tree, to illustrate what I'm trying to point out tonight. That there are different ways to solve a problem depending on individual needs. This sutta is found in the Salayatana Vagga, the chapter on the six sense basis. And it starts off with a bhikkhu who approached another bhikkhu and asked him, Avuso, or friend, to what extent is a bhikkhu's vision perfect? And then this other bhikkhu answered, to the extent that he is able to observe, according to reality, the arising and passing away of the six basis of contact. Now these are Buddhist terms, and I'm sure some of you might understand and some may not. Before I explain them, perhaps I should go through the story first, and then I'll explain according to in sequence. Now when he heard this, he was not very satisfied, because the five bases of contact, or rather the six bases of contact, refer to the sense bases that we have. The eye base, the ear base, the nose base, the tongue base, the body base, and the mind base. These are supposed to be material elements, the sensitive part of your body, of the sense doors that are able to receive stimuli from outside. Of these six sense bases, only one of them is mental. The other five are physical. So the mental base is the mind base of contact. Now he wasn't very satisfied with this answer, it seems, according to commentary, because the Buddha used to talk about the five aggregates. Are you familiar with the five aggregates? You have, first one is rupa, or matter, followed by vedana, feelings, followed by sanya, or perception, then sankhara, or mental formations, and finally vijnana, or consciousness. Now if you look at this six sense bases, six bases of contact, you will find that five of them come under rupa, under matter, right? And the other one, the mental manayatana, mental base, comes under either vijnana or under sankhara, one of them. So to him it seems that this bhikkhu who gave the answer was not really giving a perfect answer, because he only watched the arising and passing away of just two of the five aggregates. So being dissatisfied, he went to another bhikkhu and he asked him the same question. And the second bhikkhu answered, to the extent that a bhikkhu is able to observe the rising and passing away of the 5 aggregates. Now then there's inconsistency now, because in the first one it's only 2 aggregates, and now we're talking about the 5 aggregates. So he went on to a third bhikkhu and asked him the same question, and the third bhikkhu answered and said that as long as a bhikkhu is able to observe the rising and falling of the 4 great elements, then to that extent his vision can become perfect. No, that's even worse. What are the 4 great elements? Prithvi, Apo, Tejo, Vayo. Prithvi is the earth element. Apo is the water element. Tejo is the fire element. And Vayo is the wind element. And these are all categorized under Rupa or matter. So just by watching the arising and passing away of matter, this bhikkhu claims that one's vision can become perfect. The word dasana is used in Pali, and I've translated it as vision. In the commentary, it says that dasana in this case refers to insight and supramundane insight. Insight into the true nature of reality, particularly insight into Nibbana, a realization and experience of Nibbana. Looking at, if you take it from a higher standard, then you would mean the Arahata Maggaphala, the Arahata Magganyana rather, the insight or path of an Arahant, of the path, consciousness of an Arahant that perceives or experiences Nibbana. If you look at it from an inferior category, we could also say that dasana refers to the insight of a Sotapan, a stream enterer, who has had the first glimpse or first experience of Nibbana. Now, this bhikkhu was still not very satisfied, because he saw that there's even more inconsistency. The first one claimed that by merely observing the rise and fall of just 2 of the 5 aggregates, one can become enlightened, so to speak. The second one claimed that you have to watch the 5 aggregates in order to become enlightened. And the third one claimed that just by watching the one element, one of the 5 aggregates, just by watching the 4 great elements belonging to the first aggregate of matter, one can get enlightened. And he went on to ask the 4th bhikkhu. And the 4th bhikkhu said, as long as one is able to observe that whatever has the nature of arising has the nature of cessation, then to that extent one's vision can be perfect. That's even worse. This guy doesn't even categorize anything at all. Whatever arises has nature to cease. And so he didn't even categorize whether it's a nama or rupa, whether it's mind or matter. Didn't categorize it into the 5 aggregates, didn't categorize it into the 6 sense bases of contact. Never categorized it into the 4 great elements. So this bhikkhu was really confused. Now, which is the right way? And I think nowadays many of you are confused also, because people are saying the same thing in different ways, right? One will say, oh, this is the only way, you must practice in this way, and only can you get enlightened. If you don't practice this way, and all other methods are wrong. This was precisely what happened during the Buddha's time, not only to this bhikkhu, but to the people of Kalama. I'm sure you've heard of the very famous Kalama Sutta, often dubbed the Charter of Free Inquiry. And these Kalamas were actually very perplexed, because so many monks, priests, Samana, Brahmana would come to their village, and each of them would say that theirs was the only way, and others are all wrong. We have that right today too, not only among different religionists, but also within Theravada itself. So, for lay people, it's very confusing. And also for monks who are not learned enough, it is still very confusing. So I hope that tonight's talk will be able to make some clarifications on this issue. And hopefully you will leave this room tonight less confused and more open-minded, with more perfect vision. So this bhikkhu, being dissatisfied with all these apparently inconsistent answers, approached the Buddha and recounted his conversation with these bhikkhus, and asked the Buddha, what is the actual answer? What is the right answer? So instead of answering the bhikkhu directly, the Buddha gave him a simile of the Kingsuka tree. Kingsuka, if you translate it from the Pali directly, means what's it called? So the simile of the what's it called tree. I don't even know the name of the tree. Well, anyway, he says that imagine that there's a man who is looking for this Kingsuka tree, and he approaches. He's never seen a Kingsuka tree before. He approaches someone who has seen it before, and went up to him and asked, "What's the Kingsuka tree? What does it look like?" And this guy said, "Well, it looks like a charred stump." And then he went on to ask a second person for a second opinion, "What does the Kingsuka tree look like?" The second person answered, "Well, it looks like something red in color, like a piece of meat." Now that's quite a difference, isn't it? From a charred stump to a reddish piece of meat. There's no slight similarity. So he went on to ask a third person, and the third person said, "Well, it looked like something fibrous with bags hanging from it." That's even more different. And the fourth person that he asked, whom he asked, answered that it's got a luxuriant canopy and looks like a banyan tree. You know what's a banyan tree? You know, banyan tree is a huge tree with very shady, with a very luxuriant canopy and with adventitious roots, hanging from its branches. But the Buddha said that these four people are actually saying the truth. They saw the tree at different times of the year. He says, in the same way, these four monks who answered you told you the truth. They described their experience, how they perfected their vision according to how they walked the path. Now, although this simile is very short, the commentaries give us a longer story. Maybe I'll share that with you. It's a bit more graphic in its explanation. Commentary tells us that there's a story of this man who is suffering from some skin disease. So he approached a herbalist, and the herbalist told him, "Oh, that's simple. All you need to do is get a Kingsuka tree, cut off, take a part of it, and dry it, burn it, and take the ashes and make it into a colloidal solution, and then add certain herbs, and then you keep it until it ferments. Then when you drink it, you will be able to cure your skin disease." Well, he did precisely what he was told, and eventually he was cured. Then it happened that some other people also suffered from the same disease, and they heard that this person had been cured, and so they approached him, and I think 4 different people approached him. He told them his remedy. They tried it out, and they too were cured. So as you know, such things spread around. Now, then these people were all living near one particular town. One came from the north and south and east and west. In another village, somewhere far away, another guy also suffered from a similar disease, and he heard that people were cured of this disease, so eventually he made his way to this particular town and asked around, and he found out who were cured. So out of these 4, he went to ask the first one. And the first one said, "Well, this Kingsuka tree," because he's never seen a Kingsuka tree before. He's someone from outside somewhere. So the first person said, "Well, it looks like a charred stump." That was because he saw it, during the dry season. If you live in India or in Burma, you would know that there are 3 main seasons. We have the hot season, the rainy season, and the cold season. This may be quite strange to Malaysians, because to us, we are living in an equatorial climate, and it's green and fresh throughout the year. In India and in Burma, during the hot season, the leaves all drop, and it's like autumn in temperate countries. You can see only the skeletons without any leaves on them, on the trees. And forest fires are also quite common, and so when there is a forest fire, a whole patch of agricultural land or even the forest would be burned and charred. and you can see that Kinsuka tree as a charred stump. But it's amazing, because when it rains, you would have thought that all these plants are dead. But after it rains, just the first rain, the next day you will see all these buds coming out from the trees. So it's quite an amazing sight. So this first person, he saw the Kinsuka tree when it was already burnt. The second person saw it when it was flowering. It seems that the Kinsuka tree had quite red flowers, very much like the African tulip. And the third person saw it when it was fruiting. And it fruits because when it fruits, it had fruits. It was a legume, so it had these pods, hanging down from its branches, looking very fibrous in appearance, as though bags were being hung on its branches. The fourth person saw it in springtime, just after the first few rains, and there was when the leaves started to sprout, and the whole tree was very luxuriant in its canopy. So they're all actually describing the same tree at different times of the year. They described it according to what they actually perceived. Let's come back to what the bhikkhu was telling us about, the first 4 bhikkhus. The first one talked about the 6 bases of contact. Now, the word contact, or phassa, in Pali, is actually, it actually refers to something mental. Although when we use the word contact in English, usually we mean something physical. We come into contact physically. But the word contact in Pali terminology, in Buddhist terminology, means that when the external stimuli and the internal sense base comes into contact, then there arises this mental element of consciousness. So we're talking really about the sense bases like I described earlier, talking about the sensitive parts of your senses, of the eye, ear, your nose, your tongue, your body. And the mind base is supposed to be something mental. It's not something physical. So this person was actually just observing the arising and passing away of these 6 sense bases, 5 of which are actually matter, and only 1 is mind. The second watched the 5 aggregates, which are more comprehensive, because according to Buddhist terminology, every living being, every human being, every living being in this central sphere is made up of the 5 aggregates. We have rupa, which is basically the 4 great elements. If you're a meditator, you would know that when you sit in meditation, you would be able to observe in your body, hardness, softness, which correspond to the earth element. Then you would be able to feel the sensation of cohesion, like you'll feel a lump of hardness or a lump of heat somewhere. You would be able to feel the sense of flow as your sweat flows or your saliva flows. You'll be able to feel vibrations in your body. You'll be able to feel heat and cold and various other sensations. These are all classified under matter. Then we have Vedana, which are feelings. Feelings are something more mental in nature. This is something which is quite a delicate subject, because we have different views about this. When you experience physical sensation, for example, right now you're sitting down on the floor listening to me. Supposing you put your attention, you focus your attention on your buttocks, where they are in contact with the floor or the cushion. Now you'll be able to experience some sensations there, right? Warmth, maybe a sense of solidity, some pressure. These are classified under rupa or matter. And if you feel any discomfort, although it is linked to the physical sensation, the discomfort is actually mental in nature. Heat is one thing, and the feeling of discomfort in your mind is another. Also, like feelings of joy and happiness, people is easily associated with a mental activity. joy and happiness. But even unpleasurable or unpleasant feelings, people usually like to associate with the physical part of the five aggregates. As a meditator, when your concentration and mindfulness is strong enough, your insight is strong enough, you will be able to make this distinction, to be able to see that there is a difference between the bare sensation of heat, a lump of heat or a lump of hardness, and the mental discomfort that you feel because of that. In fact, if your concentration is good enough, you will be able to observe pain arising and passing in your body without getting mentally involved. Usually we react to pain. We try to push pain away, but when you get into a deep state of meditation, your mind is concentrated and mindful enough, you'll be able to watch the pain arising and passing away without getting involved in it. It's not your pain, but it's just something external and you're just watching it like everything else. That's Vedana. Sanya is perception, and this can be very easily experienced in meditation. Because when you sit down and meditate, and you try to focus on a particular object, like, for example, the rising and falling of your abdomen, or your breath, or even on the object of your metta, loving kindness, your mind will sometimes, wander off. You'll be able to see visions of past events. You will think of memories of things that you've done before in the past, right? So these are manifestations of perceptions of sanya. Sanya has the quality of being able to remember things that has happened in the past. So memories are something very common to meditators. You can see them in the course of the meditation. That's sanya. Sankhara refers to a whole lot of mental states which are not included in the other three categories. So mental states like mindfulness, like anger, like joy, like virya, effort, like chanda, jest, or a strong yearning to do something. These are all classified under mental formations. And then finally you have consciousness, which is just the bare awareness of things. This can be experienced at deeper levels of insight when your body disappears. When you observe the rising and falling of the abdomen and the other things that are happening at your six sense doors, then you come to a stage of insight where you lose the sense of the body. You don't feel any more physical sensations. You can't find your head, you can't find your shoulders, you can't find your legs. There are no more physical sensations. You can't even find the rising and falling. There's just a great peace and calm, tranquility, and a very bright and alert mind. At that time, you can understand what consciousness is. Because you've got no more body, and you'll just be aware of the sense of knowing, as well as the other sankhara, mental formations like tranquility, happiness, brightness of the mind. So this second bhikkhu was talking about watching the arising and passing away of these five aggregates that compose, a being, any being in this sense sphere. So he's doing a very comprehensive thing. Now the third bhikkhu said he was just watching the four great elements, what we talked about just now, just heat and cold, hardness and softness, various degrees of movement, vibration, and sense of cohesion, and so forth. These are all matter only. He didn't even watch the mind, and he can even get enlightened and perfect his vision. So I think we should understand that we should be humble enough to acknowledge that the process of enlightenment is something very mysterious and very highly individualized. It depends on each individual. Just like I started off today's talk by saying that if you have bad eyesight and you want to have perfect vision, you have to take measures that are appropriate to your particular condition. There's no one thing, one rule of thumb that can apply to everyone. The last bhikkhu who said that one can perfect one's vision by merely observing the rise and fall, or rather merely understanding according to reality that whatever has the nature to arise has the nature to pass away. That one is the most bewildering of all, because he didn't make any distinction between what is mind and what is matter. Right? Normally, people will tell us, we have been told that vipassana is all about being able to categorize things into mind and matter, and to be able to do that in an insightful way, not intellectually, but by actual experience. But this guy, this fourth bhikkhu, didn't even have to categorize them into mind and matter. In fact, this term, whatever has, this is a stock phrase. The stock phrase, whatever has the nature to arise, has the nature to cease, is found very often in the Pali Canon, especially described, especially referring to people who get enlightened while listening to a Dhamma talk. This was the case with Venerable Sariputta when he heard a short verse by Venerable Asachi. At that time, Sariputta was not yet a monk; he was Upatissa. He belonged to another sect. And when he heard the short stanza recited by Venerable Asachi, who was a newly attained arahant, one of the 5 bhikkhus who listened to the first discourse of the Buddha, he got enlightened. And the phrase that they use is simply this. As he listened to the verse, then he realized that whatever has the nature to arise has the nature to cease. And that was how he got enlightened as a Sotapan. So did Moggallana, because Sariputta and Moggallana were good friends. And after Sariputta had attained the Dhammachakku or the Dhamma eye, he went to see his friend, Kolita, I think, and recited the same stanza, the same verse to him. And Kolita at that time also got enlightened by listening to the verse. And his mode of getting enlightened was just realizing that whatever has the nature to arise has the nature to pass away. The commentary to this particular sutta tells us that fourth mode of perfecting one's vision is not something very ordinary. It's something very exceptional. A person or a yogi who can use this mode to perfect his vision is also an exceptional person. He is one to whom any subject of meditation is appropriate. He is like a Superman, he can meditate under any conditions, and he is not choosy about food. He is perfectly healthy, and he can do vipassana first or samatha first, or whatever object to him is okay. So because he's so exceptional, then he doesn't have to choose. He just has to be aware that whatever has the nature to arise has the nature to pass away. Now, that's not the end of the discourse. The Buddha went on to give another simile. He says that it's just like there is a town in the outskirts, in the borderlands of a country. That town is very heavily fortified with walls and moats, and it has got it's got a very intelligent and clever gatekeeper who takes charge of 6 gates going into this town. Now, one day, from the eastern gate, there is a pair of swift messengers who comes to the gatekeeper, and they asked him, where is the mayor of this town? Then the gatekeeper, knowing that this pair of swift messengers, someone whom he knew, he allowed them to go in and said, oh, he's sitting there in the middle, in the center, at the crossroads. So the swift pair of messengers went up to the mayor, passed him the message accurately, and they left the way they came. So the same thing happened at the other gates, at the 4 gates. There are altogether 6 gates in there, but there are only 4 pairs of swift messengers who came to pass the message to the mayor. Right. So this is the simile that the Buddha gave. And the Buddha explained the simile by saying that the town at the borderland refers to this body of ours, right? And the 6 gates refer to the 6 sense doors. The gatekeeper is mindfulness, right? Then the swift pair of messengers are, what are they? The swift pair of messengers are samatha vipassana. I'm going to explain that later. And what else? No, yeah, the mayor is supposed to be vijnana, consciousness, or a heightened sort of consciousness would be insight consciousness. The crossroads here refer to the 4 great elements, and the message, the accurate message that was conveyed to him refers to Nibbana. And the way they came refers to the Noble Eightfold Path. Now, it's not so easy to imagine how this simile works, right? But the explanation is that you need to have sati, you need to have mindfulness as a guard. And one of the functions of mindfulness is actually to act as a guard. You guard the sense doors so that you are able to observe phenomena as they arise at your sense doors. This swift pair of messengers, they have to come to the gate to get through this gatekeeper, right? So mindfulness is necessary for both samatha and vipassana. Now, I want to talk more about samatha and vipassana, because nowadays some people say that you need to, it's absolutely necessary for you to attain the jhanas first before you can start to do vipassana and gain insights. And yet, there's another school of thought which says that it's not necessary to do samatha. You can go on straight to do vipassana. What is samatha and what is vipassana? The word samatha means tranquility, to calm, to make tranquil, to pacify. The word vipassana means vi is clear or in a special way, and passana is to see clearly, see in a special way. It's interesting that our understanding of the word samatha is actually based very much on the commentaries and what our teachers tell us. Nowadays we have the Tipitaka, the Pali Canon, in digital format, and it's now all found in one CD, the whole Tipitaka with all the commentaries and the sub-commentaries. So it's very easy now, very convenient now to do research. You just have to search for the word samatha and see where it occurs in the whole Tipitaka, right? So I've done some research on the word samatha, and it's funny, it's strange that in the whole Tipitaka, the Buddha had never equated samatha to jhana. It's very strange, because we always think that samatha means jhana, right? Samatha is described in several suttas as one-pointedness of mind. The mind is collected and is not dissipated, is concentrated on a particular object. Right. So people who do rising and falling, using rising and falling as the primary object, like here in Selangor Vipassana, are actually doing samatha and vipassana combined. I'll explain that later. Let me go on to vipassana first. Vipassana means seeing clearly, seeing in special ways. In what special way? In a way that everything compounded, everything that is formed out of conditions exhibit the three characteristics of anicca, dukkha, anatta, of impermanence, suffering, and not self. And in order to see clearly, to gain an insight into these three characteristics, we have to act like a scientist, to be objective and just to observe. What is reality? Reality is whatever is what we can observe or what we can experience or perceive through our senses. To us, anyway, it's subjective in that sense. Whatever we perceive through our senses goes to our mind, we process it, and that is our idea, our perception, our limited understanding of reality. In order to have understanding and insight into reality as it truly is, then we must be like the gatekeeper, stand guard at the sense doors and just watch and see how things actually behave. So, in order to see clearly in different ways, in special ways, in ways according to anicca, dukkha, anatta, we need to be objective and to just watch at the six sense doors. Now, those who do pure vipassana, just do that. You just watch. Whatever that arises, you just keep on watching, rising and passing away. Just like this fourth bhikkhu who says that as long as you're able to see that everything has, whatever has the nature to arise, has the nature to cease, then you can perfect your vision. That's all you need to do. Just be aware of whatever that arises at your six sense doors. So a person who's doing pure vipassana would just be sitting down and observing whatever that arises. He doesn't have a primary object like what you are doing here. Here Mahasi Sayadaw has actually combined, samatha and vipassana. As I said, samatha means concentrating your mind on a particular object. Tranquilizing the mind by getting rid of all those dissipating and wandering thoughts. Mahasi Sayadaw's teacher, Jedawong U Narada, did not actually teach rising and falling. He taught choiceless awareness, much like Krishnamurti taught. His main, in fact, right now in Burma, we also have what we call the Mula Mingun Sayadaw, a Mula Mingun method of vipassana, where they practice according to the original teachings of Mingun Sayadaw U Narada. They don't use rising and falling as their primary object. They don't use the breath as their primary object. They just watch whatever that arises at the six sense doors. Apparently, when Mahasi Sayadaw went to meditate under Mingun Sayadaw U Narada, he found that rather than just sitting down and watch things arising and passing in the six sense doors, it was more appropriate for him to concentrate on a primary object when other secondary objects are not that obvious. So he found that it helped him in concentrating. Another contemporary of his is Tampulu Sayadaw. Tampulu Sayadaw also studied under the same teacher, Mingun Sayadaw U Narada, but he taught a different sort of meditation. He concentrated more on the 32 parts of the body, using that as a samatha practice, and then only after that to go on to vipassana. Or those who did not want to do with the 32 parts of the body, he would ask them to do vipassana by watching the six sense doors, and to concentrate on the internal sound as a primary object. Internal sound. When you concentrate on the sound when you're sitting in a very enclosed and quiet room, you can hear the internal sound within you. And that would be their primary object. When they go for Pinabat, they, instead of just watching the movements of the legs, like Mahasi yogis are instructed to do, they will be asked to observe the six senses in a sequence: seeing, hearing, touching. Seeing, hearing, touching, seeing. As you walk, as you walk around, as you walk to a Pinabat, you open up your awareness to the different objects, but you rotate your awareness. You see, and then you hear, and you walk, see, hear, walk, see, hear, walk. Or if you have thoughts, then you watch your thoughts as well. So you can see that those who do pure vipassana, you don't need to have a primary object. There's no such thing as a primary or secondary object. To them, everything is an object as long as it becomes apparent. So what Mahathissaro has done is that he has streamlined the practice by combining both samatha and vipassana. So what you are doing here actually is samatha vipassana, not just pure vipassana. When your mind is, when you're sitting down, you try to watch the rising and falling, which is something very sensible, because for most of us, our minds are very dissipated. You're very restless. You try to sit down and watch all the six sense doors, you wouldn't be able to do it. You'll be carried away by your thoughts, by your memories, by sleepiness, by a lot of distractions. So it makes sense to sit down and calm down your mind first, tranquilize it, pacify it, calm it down, and when the mind is calm and concentrated, then it's able to open up its awareness and watch other objects as well. It's like a pond. After heavy rain, the pond will be very murky and muddy, right? But if you leave it for some time, after a few hours or the next day, you will see that all the sediments would have settled down at the bottom, and the pond will be very clear. It's just like that. If you just sit down and allow your mind to focus on one object, then it has a chance to calm down, to be tranquilized quickly, and then you'll be able to see clearly. So coming back to samatha and jhana, again, people who claim that samatha means jhana also would have no basis in the Pali Canon, because, as I said earlier, the Buddha did not equate samatha with jhana directly. The word jhana also is very interesting, because it comes from the root jaya, and jayati means it has two meanings. One meaning is to burn, and the other meaning is to think, right? And there are many words that make use of this word jayati, and they do not mean concentrating your mind on a particular object to the exclusion of everything else for an extended period of time. They mean simply just thinking, contemplating, thinking, considering, meditating, and not meditating, sajjayati, for example, ujjayati, sajjayati. These are different words that are formed using the same stem. Another interesting observation is that in the canon, there is no mention of the meditation subject that brings about jhana. We have a lot of descriptions, very elaborate descriptions of the experience of jhana found in the suttas. But there's hardly any sutta that tells you what is the meditation object that leads to this jhana experience. And the jhana experience that we understand right now, according to the commentaries and according to what the teachers tell us and according to the experience of yogis who practice according to these commentaries, is not the same as what we can understand from reading the suttas. 2 years ago, there was a jhana conference that was held in the US. It's the first jhana conference of the West. People like Venerable Dr. Gunaratana was there, and then Siale Dipankara was there, and so was Lay Brighton, who is a disciple of Ayya Khema. And Ayya Khema also taught jhana. But her idea of jhana is quite different from the idea of jhana that we understand through the Paut method, for example, or through Venerable Ajahn Brahm's descriptions in his book. They are quite different. In fact, Lay Brighton has got his own website, and he is also in the process of having dialogues with fellow jhana practitioners to come to a wider understanding of what the experience of jhana is. Because people can claim that they have jhana, but what is actually jhana? And what is it? How can we actually determine, whether a particular person's experience is the jhana that was meant by the Buddha in the scriptures? And the only way that you can find out is to practice it yourself and to look at the scriptures and see whether they coincide and whether they're the same. In fact, there's one guy in the US. his name is Jeff Brooks, and he's setting up. He's got a website called Ecstatic Buddhism, where he claims that he has attained all the jhanas, the rupa jhanas and the arupa jhanas, and even realized the Four Noble Truths. And he says that his experiences are in accordance with the canon, you know. But when I read his descriptions of his experience, they seem to agree with what is written in the canon, but it's quite different from what is written in the Visuddhimagga or in the commentaries, you know, because the degree of concentration that is mentioned in the Visuddhimagga and that implied in the suttas seem to be quite different. The Visuddhimagga seems to have a very high standard of for classifying jhana. You know, it's a very intense form of concentration. Anyway, what I'm trying to say is that we need to do more research into these concepts like jhana and samatha and vipassana, and we can understand that you know, there are so many different ways of getting enlightened, of walking the path, because you know, different people have different needs. You have different backgrounds. For some people, it might be very necessary for them to do samatha first before they can do vipassana. Not only do they need it, but they have been programmed for it. You know, when you are born, you know, you have an operating system is really inside your brain. The chip is already there. You know, it's not easy to change it. So I hope that, you know, in tonight's talk, I have made the foundation, you know, for you to become more open-minded and to understand that there are many different ways of getting enlightened depending on each individual's particular needs. And this is only one sutta, you know. In this particular sutta, there are 4 modes to perfect vision. But there are other suttas as well that talk about different other modes of getting enlightened. But you have to be practical also, you know. We don't have so much time in this world. You can't go around doing too much shopping. You better start somewhere. And if you think that, you know, a particular method suits you, I think that you should pursue it seriously without any doubt. Now, how does one know whether the method that one is practicing is the correct one? Well, there are several guidelines. First of all, you may ask yourself, by practicing this method, do I feel more mindful? Do I have more presence of mind? Do I feel that I'm able to keep the hindrances away better? Do I have greater insight into reality? So if you find that this is working for you, then I think that you should continue your practice. If you find that by doing this practice, you're getting more sloth and torpor, you know, you're getting more and more sleepy, you're getting more and more distractions, more hindrances, you are being plagued by more hindrances, and you don't seem to be making any progress. You're getting a lot of other defilements are coming into you, like being very conceited, like being very narrow-minded in your thinking, in being unable to accept others who are different from you. There must be something wrong somewhere. But I would also like to stress that meditation is not the be-all and end-all, that you also need to have some Dhamma background, you know. Some people, you know, they just like to just meditate. But if you don't have enough Dhamma background, you don't read the suttas, and you just rely on what your teacher teaches you, that could also be quite dangerous. Because every one of us has our own ways of interpreting things, and sometimes it's not always correct. Another thing is that the Buddha did not talk only about ultimate realities. He did not only talk about meditation. Although meditation is central to his teaching, he also talked about, you know, ways of relating with people. How to, you know, balance your relationship with people by cultivating certain qualities like tolerance, understanding, forgiveness, humility, loving kindness. Loving kindness is particularly stressed in our in the suttas, and the Buddha always urges his disciples, especially monks, to radiate loving kindness. In fact, in the Samyutta Nikaya, it is said that the Buddha said that if a monk has not mastered metta meditation, then he is not freed from the assaults of Mara, from the assaults of spirits. So if you are a monk, a forest monk, and you want to stay in the forest, you had better make sure that your metta is strong enough. If your metta is strong enough, it seems that perhaps it's the energy, the positive energy that repels all these evil forces. They cannot come near you. It's a natural law of nature that light repels darkness. So I'm happy to know that in this center you all have a balance, between doing vipassana and metta meditation, coupled with also chanting at times, right? And one time you were also having some courses on Dhamma, Pariyati, which is very good, and I hope that you will be able to continue that on a regular basis. So I think I'm running out of time. Before we end tonight's session, maybe we can open to the floor for any questions or comments that we would like to have. There are several techniques of meditation found in the suttas which are not generally accepted to be regarded to be vipassana, like contemplating the repulsiveness of the body and contemplation on death. Who did not regard them as vipassana? That's, as I said, much of our knowledge of Buddhism is influenced by the commentaries and by our teachers. In the Satipatthana Sutta, the Buddha says that this is a one-way street. Ekayano ayam bhikkhu maggo. Ayam maggo, this magga, this path, ekayano, is a one-way. It's a one-way street for the purification of beings, for the overcoming of lamentation and sorrow and suffering and all sorts of things, right? And also for the realization of Nibbana. And inside the Satipatthana Sutta, we have the contemplation of the 32 parts of the body, and we also have the contemplation on death as found in the last section of Kayanupassana. Contemplation of body, last section is on the cemetery contemplations. Actually, the cemetery contemplations is a combination of Asubha and Maranasati. Because the Buddha says that the bhikkhu goes to the charnel ground, and then he looks at the corpse, and then he will reflect. I'm also of the same nature, and one day I also will be like that. So actually, it is a contemplation of death also. And that section ends with, like all the other sections, including, like the sections on the contemplation of the 4 elements, or the 5 aggregates, anapana, on breathing, they all end in the same way. It says, thus, a monk dwells, contemplating the arising and passing away of a phenomena. Yeah? In the end, he says he attains an attainment that is free from attachment. He's free from attachment in the world. Now, as I said earlier, the process of enlightenment is something very mysterious. We don't really understand how it works. People listening to Dhamma and then suddenly they get enlightened. How do you know they get enlightened? Were they watching the Nama and Rupa? Were they categorizing into the 4 great elements? The 5 aggregates? In the middle of a discourse. Were any of you trying to do that when you were listening to me? It doesn't work. You didn't get enlightened. Well, maybe one day you will. So it's very difficult. We don't really know how it works, right? So it's your question is whether we should do it or not. It's in the sutta. Why not? Do it. Dr. Wong just asked. I translated the introduction to the Satipatthana Sutta and saying this is the one-way street. And he said some people translate it as this is the only way. Now let's look at the Pali. It says Ekayano ayam bhikkhu maggo. Ekayano is one word. Ayang is one word, Bhikkhu is another word, Mago is another word. Okay, forwards. Going to teach you some Pali tonight. Right? Ekayano means one way. Okay? It comes from Eka and Ayana. Ayana means one way, one path, one walking. Okay. Then Ayang means this. Ekayano Ayang. Bhikkhu, monks. It's a vocative saying monks. This one way. Mago is path. So what he's trying to say is that this path is the one way. This path is one way. You can put a the there, or you don't want to put a the also can. This path is one way to the purification of beings. Now, it's strange because some people want to insist that this is the only way. They translate Ekayano as the only way, which is not true. If you have the only there, you have another word, another particle called Yewa. Ewa means only. If the Buddha has said Ekayano Yewa Ayang Bhikkhu, then it's one and only way. There's no Ewa, right? So I was reading a book in a introduction to Satipatthana Samyutta by Venerable Bhikkhu Bodhi, and he also commented on this, and he said that there is neither canonical nor commentarial evidence to support the translation that it is the only way. No, there's none at all. And it's true, because when you look in the commentaries, the commentaries give us a whole list of possibilities, and none of them says there is a one way. That's the only way. So Bhikkhu Bodhi says that perhaps we could translate it as one way. The one way, you can either put the or not. If you put the, it's more restrictive. If you don't put the, it's more open. Right? This path is one way for the purification of beings. This path is the one way for the purification of beings. Right? For example, as I said, when people listen to discourses and they get enlightened, under which of the Satipatthana do they fall in? Right? And even the Paticca Samuppada is not mentioned in the Satipatthana Sutta. Whereas you have instances recorded in the suttas of people listening to the Paticca Samuppada and getting enlightened. Yeah, a lot of meditation teachers says that it's impossible to get enlightened, is it? As a Arahant or as a Sotapan? Yeah. As I said earlier, some teachers are very assertive, and they say that you must have the jhanas before you can practice vipassana to gain enlightenment. Yet there are many cases in the Buddha's time. I'll give you a very classic case. This one was just after the Buddha had attained enlightenment, after he had given the Anatta Lakkhana Sutta, discourse on the characteristic of non-self to the 5 bhikkhus, his first followers. Shortly afterwards, there was a young man by the name of Yasa. He was a rich man's son, like a playboy, He was enjoying himself at night with his harem, and they were dancing and entertaining him, and then everybody fell asleep. He fell asleep. When he fell asleep, his entertainers saw that, our master is asleep, so they also fell down and they had a rest. And then when he got up, he saw that, his female entertainers were very unsightly. They were all sprawled on the floor, and their hair were all, undone, and their saliva was dripping from their mouth and all that. He felt very disgusted, and he left his palace, so to call, not really palace. He left his room, okay, and somehow or other he was led to the Buddha. He says he was looking for a haven, because he felt this is all very disgusting. He was looking for a safe place to be. And finally, he landed up where the Buddha was. And the Buddha was sitting there, and he came towards the Buddha, and the Buddha said, where are you going, Yasa? And he says, I'm looking for a haven. Then the Buddha says, come and sit here. Perhaps you can find a haven here. Is a haven here? Come, sit. Then the Buddha talked to him. He gave him a discourse, gave him a gradual discourse, talked about dana, and when you do dana, you can get wealth, become wealthy in this life and next life. Talked about sila. If you do sila, then you'll be reborn in a good existence. If you just do dana without sila, you need not necessarily have the chance to be born in a good existence. You can come back and become a pet dog, a royal elephant. Even a beautiful Chinese carp in an aquarium. You can become all these things. You can enjoy a lot of wealth, a lot of luxuries of the senses, but you are not a human being. So if you do dana and then you observe sila, you can come back to be a human being or go up to heaven and enjoy the pleasures of the senses. So he thought about this. He thought about the advantages of being reborn in heaven. And then he also thought about how no matter how much you enjoy up in heaven, one day you're going to die, right? And he talked about the disadvantages of sensual pleasure, talked about the advantages of renunciation. And then when he found that Yasa's mind was free from the hindrances, no, he was not distracted. He was not beset by any of the 5 hindrances, and that his mind was receptive to what he was going to say. Then he started to talk about the 4 Noble Truths. And when he talked about the 4 Noble Truths, Yasa understood the meaning, and then he got enlightened. He got the Dhammachakku. Dhammachakku is, they call it the eye of wisdom. That is, people say that it means become a sotapan, right? And so shortly after that, his father came looking for him. His father was very concerned, his poor boy had lost already in the middle of the night, so he was looking for him, and he was also led to the Buddha's presence. And when the Buddha saw him coming from afar, he made use of his psychic power to conceal Yasa. So Yasa became invisible to his father. And the Buddha asked him, "Where are you going?" He says, "I'm looking for Yasa." Then the Buddha says, come and sit here. Perhaps you'll find Yasa." And the Buddha gave him the same talk, a similar talk about dana, sila, about the benefits of going to heaven, about the benefits, the disadvantages of sensual pleasure, about the benefits of renunciation. And when he saw that his mind was free of the hindrances and was receptive to what he was saying, he started to talk about the 4 Noble Truths. Right? At the same time, Yasa was listening to the discourse. So as his father heard the discourse, he also got the Dhammachakku. Right? And as Yasa was listening to the discourse, he contemplated on what he had attained. And then he became liberated. He became an arahant while listening to the discourse, So you can imagine, did he do jhana or not before he came? Or his father, the wealthy father. Now, the commentators will give you one answer, and people who read the canon might give you another answer. You might want to read the suttas. They tell you about the experience of jhana. In many suttas, for example, in Anguttara Nikaya, there's one sutta that's called Panchangika Sutta. It talks about, it gives you what are the, when a person is in jhana, what are the things that he experiences. Seems that that's what the sutta description, right? Now, what the commentary, the Visuddhimagga, and what our teachers tell us is that when a person is supposed to be in jhana, his mind is so absorbed in his object of meditation that he is totally oblivious to whatever is happening around him. So his 5 senses are all cut off, and his mind is totally absorbed into the object of meditation, whatever he's watching. Basically, that's what Visuddhimagga tells us. Whether there's any move made by the Sangha to try to demystify this issue, right? It's not easy, There's one sutta in the Anguttara Nikaya where someone asked a monk, Mahakachana, I think, why is it that lay people, they quarrel with one another and fight over one another? And he says that lay people fight with one another, they quarrel with one another because of attachment with and attachment to and obsession with pleasures of the senses, with sensual objects. Then he asks, why is it that monks and priests quarrel with one another? They don't have any property, right? They're supposed to be homeless. Oh, he says that's because of attachment to and obsession with views. So the Buddha also said the same thing. One day, at one time, one of the Buddha's contemporaries, he's also another famous teacher by the name of Nikanta Nataputta. He's founder of Jainism, founder of Jainism, Mahavira. After he died, his disciples were all quarreling with one another. Saying, oh, you know the Dhamma, I know the Dhamma, you don't know. What you are saying is not the true Dhamma, what I'm saying is the true Dhamma. So they were quarreling with one another, and it was very disgusting. So the matter was reported to Ananda, and Ananda went to report it to the Buddha. Then Ananda, he expressed apprehension, that the same thing might happen when the Buddha passed away, especially disputes concerning the livelihood of monks and concerning the Patimokkha, the monastic rules. Then the Buddha said, if there were any disputes concerning the Vinaya, these would be very trivial compared to disputes concerning what is the right path to enlightenment. So that's what's happening now. There are so many different views, and it's very confusing. As I started off just now by saying, it's confusing to all of you. And it's not something very new, It has all happened during the Buddha's time. That's why the Buddha gave us Kalama Sutta. Don't simply listen because is your teacher. Don't simply listen because it's in the scriptures. Even if it's scriptures, don't simply accept it all. I think I gave you some pointers just now. In fact, the Buddha was also asked the same. Venerable Gautami Mahapajapati and Upali, Venerable Upali also approached the Buddha and asked him, to give us, to tell them the Buddha Dhamma in brief, so that they can, go back and practice. And then Buddha says, when you hear of a Dhamma Vinaya, a teaching, and that teaching conduces to possessiveness, to more attachment, to craving, to development of all those unwholesome qualities, then you can be sure that that is not my Dhamma Vinaya. On the other hand, if a teaching teaches you to be dispassionate, to be unattached, to be non-gregarious, to practice for seclusion and for concentration to improve your insight, then that is my teaching. So what he's trying to say is that you have to try it out yourself. Whatever the person tells you, does it conduce to seclusion? Does it conduce to pacifying and tranquilizing your mind? Does it conduce to your ability to understand the true nature of reality in terms of anicca, dukkha, anatta? Simple one.
Not necessarily, because all of them have very theoretically very sound. They put subordinates.
Yes.
They put sutta, they put commentary, all theoretically sound. This argument comes, they the same thing.
Yeah.
The only thing is it's a practice sound.
Yeah, right. So that's why the Buddha says, practice it. Then try it first, Yeah. That's what I'm saying, earlier on, we have to be realistic, right? We don't have so much time to do so much window shopping. We have to, you pick something which seems reasonable to you, you try it out, and if it works, stay with it. Don't jump around and like it's, rolling stone gathers no moss. The question is, if a person sees the rising and falling of phenomena, then it's vipassana. Before you see that is samatha, is it? So he says that if a person is watching the rising and falling, if he doesn't see the arising and passing away of phenomena, then he's still with samatha. And only when he sees the rising and falling away of phenomena can he be classified as vipassana. Okay. Actually, in the Satipatthana Sutta, you cannot even find the word vipassana. You can't even find the word vipassana in the Satipatthana Sutta. Neither is samatha, You find the word anupassana. Anupassana. Anupassana means to see again and again. Anu is again and again. Passana is to see. To see again and again. So the see again and again, the rising, samudaya dhammanupasi. Samudaya means arising dhammas. Vaya dhammanupasi. Vaya is the dissolution dhammas. To see the arising dhamma and the dissolution, dissolving dhamma again and again.
So sorry to interrupt again. So does it mean that seeing the rising and passing away of dhamma is actually, so as long as there's a constant in the mind of my body, my rising falling, it is still within concept.
Well, now we're you're introducing a number of other concepts as well. You see, our understanding also now of samatha and vipassana, as I said earlier, is very much influenced by the Visuddhimagga and our teachers. Now the Visuddhimagga, the Abhidhamma, and our teachers have classified the objects of samatha and vipassana into one is concept and one is ultimate reality. Right? But it's not necessarily so. The Buddha did not classify it that way. You know, that's why some vipassana teachers, although it's a bit contradictory, they say that even when you're doing pure vipassana, like what you're doing in Mahasi method, you can also get jhana. You know, and they also, on the one hand, they say that samatha means has concepts as objects, and then vipassana has ultimate reality as object. And on the other hand, they say that when you're doing vipassana also you can get jhana. So there seems to be a contradiction, isn't it? So it's not so easy, because we are talking on two different, we have two different parameters. If you are basing your debate or argument on the commentaries, it's based on one model. If you're talking based on the suttas, it will be on another model. So I think we need to do more research into this and to have more dialogue with open-minded members of the Sangha, right? As one move to demystify this process of enlightenment. Well, I'm in the process of coming out with our new zine, Sasana, and in there I've started the ball rolling with an article on that. It's called Ways to Attain Enlightenment. So I think that they may start the ball rolling. So when the new zine comes out, please read that article. It talks about different ways of that you can get enlightened by listening to the Dhamma, by teaching the Dhamma, by reciting the Dhamma, by reflecting on the Dhamma, and finally by meditation. So not only meditation, you can do a lot of other things as well. Not like the three monkeys, but right? But you don't. Yeah. When I say cut off the senses, I mean the description of jhana given in the commentaries and the present-day teachers is that when you are in jhana, you are totally absorbed in your object, whatever you are thinking of, and then you cannot hear anything, you cannot see anything, you cannot feel anything, smell anything or taste anything at all. It's just like you are reading a novel. You are so absorbed in it, you don't know even your someone is calling you, so you can't hear. That's why jhana is translated as absorption nowadays. So the question is that those people who get enlightened by listening to Dhamma talk. Now, prior to that Dhamma talk, they had not done meditation before. They did not do samatha, they did not do vipassana, and yet they managed to get enlightened. So Sati here was saying that he has heard the explanation that these people had very exceptional paramis, and as they were listening to the Dhamma talk, then they make use of vipassana. They were observing phenomena while they were listening to the talk, and that's how they got enlightened. That's the explanation he heard. Now, the Buddha, when he gave his talks, he was not trying to establish a very systematic and structured way of presenting Buddhism. In fact, Christmas Humphreys used to say that the Buddha did not teach Buddhism. He taught the way out of suffering. All right. So when we have now we have the Tipitaka, and in the suttas we find that sometimes the Buddha will say one thing to one person and he will say another thing to another person, and these seem to be contradictory, inconsistent. So the scholars, the elders of old, the ancient elders, they have gone through all these texts before, and they have tried to understand it in such a way that the inconsistencies are only apparent, that they have come up with a model to try to explain all these inconsistencies. So one of the models that they have done, that they have come up with, is this Abhidhamma model that is used in the Visuddhimagga. In the Abhidhamma model, the only way to get enlightened is by doing vipassana.